tonight, in true form, if you don't know who I am, I'm Dr. Jim Haggerton. I'm a chiropractor from Texas. My wife is way cooler and way smarter than me, and she's the reason that we're actually here. I just talk a lot and I love to teach, and so she brings me along to be able to teach on some of the specifics of why these oils are so incredible. And so tonight, I'm going to overwhelm you with a lot of information, but I promise it's all going to be understandable. And we're going to go through hormones, but I'm going to do it a little bit different. And we're going to go through some of the foundational things that you need to know about hormones, because one of the things, don't sell myself short. Is that a short joke, Lisa? Did you just call me short? Lisa knows me, so I think she did. I think she just called me short. All right, we're going to have words after this. It's fine. It's fine. I'm not hurt. It's fine. I need another oil. Where's my Valerie? It's fine. So I'm going to go through some of the foundational things that you need to know, because one of the things that I find that people do wrong, especially in holistic land, is what I call us all in our like crunchy, hey, we're awesome, and we all use oils and herbs, and we drink bone broth for breakfast, and you know, all these things. We make our own yogurt and our own kombucha and all these things. One of the things that I find that people do is, number one, is they put all of their eggs of healing in one basket, and they assume that doing one thing in one area in one realm for one gigantic system is supposed to right this ship that you've been riding for 10, 20, 30, 40, 60 years when we're talking about hormones. And these pathways that you have been building in balance, out of balance, whatever, for 45, 65, 80 years. But you're supposed to use one oil one time, and this thing is supposed to like magically go away. But there are so many different things that you need to add in. The thing that we're really blessed in YL is that we have so many different things within our shopping cart, if you will, of YL that all play into helping this system do its job. And so I'm going to give you a bunch of different things we need to look at, but you cannot say, oh, well, I'm going to take all these supplements to help with my hormones, and then I'm going to use some essential oils, but I'm going to leave out diet because I don't really care about that. I love Oreos. And so I'm going to eat Oreos and use frankincense. And because frankincense is amazing and Jesus had it, then it's got to overcome the Oreos and I'm going to be fine. That's not how it works, right? And we can't say, oh, well, you know, whatever, I'm going to let you have the Oreos. I'm going to use frankincense, but I'm going to sit on the couch all the time and I'm not going to do movement, even though it is an essential nutrient like water or air, because I just don't like that. I just prefer not to sweat. Okay. That's not how you're made, right? Like there's ways that the body is created to function. And if we follow this plan, that the way that the Lord made our bodies to work, then it does what it's supposed to do, period, right? So we're going to talk about those things, and we're going to kind of get into the middle of it. The other thing that I find with people from traveling all over the place is that most everybody that I talk to who hasn't gotten either a, oh my gosh, experience with oils, or like just period, like on anything, like, oh my gosh, there was a thing and I used the oil on the thing and poof, it was gone, you know, whatever. Or I couldn't do this and I did it and blah, you know, whatever their thing is. Like everybody's got a story, right? They either, if they haven't got that yet, or they have a thing that they are working on and they're wanting to get better and they haven't got the results they want. The only reason is because they either don't use enough of the product or they don't use it consistent enough. And that's it. That's normally the only reasons. Because when I was in my brick and mortar practice, right now I do everything telemedicine, right? And so everything is teaching online, traveling and teaching, online consults and everything after a pro surfing tour that went bad. Long story. That's not true. I did surf poorly, but that's another story for another day. But one of the things that people would say is they'd come in and they would say, hey, I did all the things you told me and I still have hot flashes. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, how much of the oil did you use? And they're like, 2 drops. And I'm like, how many days? And they're like, 1. I'm like, okay. I'm like, these oils aren't from underneath the fingernail of Jesus himself. I mean, it's like you have to use them more consistently because we're suggesting to the body what we want it to do. And you've got to give the body more input, right? It's kind of like, you know, if you are sitting in front of social media, watching mainstream news all day long and expecting to be a positive, happy person, that's not going to happen either. Like having one positive person speak to you one day a month and you watch crap all day long, you're going to be a negative, unhappy person. Well, in your health, you can't sit there and do all of these things all day long and have all of this input, all of these things for all these years, and then all of a sudden go, well, I used I use Clary Sage. I like bought Progestins Plus, and my hormones haven't bounced out. It doesn't work like that, right? The body's a little bit more intricate than that. So we're going to go through the basics, and I want to show you how the hormones are actually created in the body. I'm going to show you how they're released. I'm going to show you some of the foundational things that are key to making sure the body has what it needs so that you can have the building block of building hormones, and then adding in the supplements and the essential oils and the different lifestyle changes to be able to give your body the most chance it can to having really good hormones, right? We're going to talk about fertility stuff. We're going to talk about my top picks for fertile age range women, menopause women, guys, teens, kids. And we'll go through all that stuff. And then I'll give you a little bit of time for questions, period. And we'll go through that. Some of the best stuff comes out of questions. So we're going to go through Hormones 101. I've got some slides here for you on my trusty little digital memo pad. And so I want to get this for you. All right. So number one is always start with the basics. We always want to go to this magic bullet, silver bullet thing first. We always want to go every time. It never fails. I'm always like, hey, ask me questions about hormones or whatever. And they say, what is the one thing to fix this? What oil do I use for PCOS? What thing do I use for this condition? And I'm like, well, it's not that simple. That's not how it works. So I'm really good. It's simple. I'm a dude. I'm really simple. So when we back it up, we go, well, how does the body work, period? And let's understand what the body really needs. And let's understand how the body really functions so that we can understand how to help it do those things, right? Hi, Melissa. And so here's the basics of how the body works. And then we're going to flesh this out, right? The basics of making sure the body has everything that it needs is super simple. You ready? Eat less junk, eat more good, drink water, sleep a little bit better, think happy thoughts, and move around. That's it. I mean, that's really like the basics of how the body is made. Like if you do those things well, you eat more good than you do bad, you breathe, right? Get plenty of sleep. We move around. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like this is literally the baseline of how the body operates. But there's intricacies for every single person because every single square with a face on this Zoom has a different environment. Within your square, within your sphere, there is a totally different set of stressors. There's a totally different set of things that are trying to pull your body away from that normal, perfect function, right? And so what's happened is the Lord made this perfect body, right? Like we have this perfect system that is supposed to operate perfectly every single day of the year, but we put ourselves into situations where we subject ourselves to whatever stress it is in our environment. And that stress over a long period of time forces our body to adapt. And then we're going to create what we call symptoms, right? Then some guy came along, named the symptom something. We gave it a diagnosis so that we could medicate it. And now we have industries built around medication and procedures for hormone imbalance. When literally the only thing that happened was some guys goes, oh man, that's bad. That rash on your arm is crazy. And they go, what is it? And he goes, I have no idea. And I have no idea is translated into eczema. Like eczema means rash of unknown origin. And so they just name stuff like that. And they're like, dude, I have no freaking clue. Perfect. Name it eczema. Let's put a medication to it. And then we can like bill people for it. And we can bill insurance, right? And here we are all these years later. And all these different things have names. The thing that's interesting though, is when you go back to function all the time and you go back to physiology, all of these different things with names all go back to similar reasons on why they happen, right? Like this, this one issue over here in top left corner is not that much different than this issue. There's just little things that are going different inside the body, but down deep, they're really caused by really 2 or 3 main core problems that are going wrong in the body, right? So we're going to talk about that. All right, so always start with the basics, go back, make things simple. When you feel overwhelmed, you're normally doing it wrong or you're doing it too fast. And if you're confused, it's normally wrong. So just slow down. And then if you're still confused, there's plenty of people on the Zoom call that would love to help you. I mean, good gosh, there's tons of people in here, right? And so we're going to go slow on this. All right, here's something that praying through this class, this is something that part of you, especially the women on here, really need to hear. Guys are simpler. So when I talk about hormones, I always make this joke because I come into these conferences and they're like, hey, we want you to teach on women's hormones. You got 25 minutes. And I'm like, you want me to tell you everything there is to know and fix women's hormones in 25 minutes? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, man, You really believe in me more than I believe in me. That's awesome. And that's impossible, right? But guys, I can do it in about 25 seconds. I mean, guys are really simple in the way that men's hormones work. And I always joke, I'm a classic Ford guy. I like old Ford trucks. The rustier, the better, honestly, for me. And so the thing I love about old Ford trucks is they're simple. There's a motor and that's it. There's nothing else in there. There's no electronics. There's nothing. There's no insulation in these things. They rattle like crazy. Guys are like old Ford trucks. They're super simple. There's only a couple things for us that make our hormones run. Women, you guys are more like Lamborghinis. There is a ton of stuff. There's a ton of intricate ways that it all works. There's a ton of ways that it all connects together. There's a ton of things like if this doesn't add up to this, and then you don't do this at a certain time of the day or the month, then it doesn't equal that. And it is completely different game. And so we're going to talk about functionally how this works, but that's why I also have to talk about, hey, we're going to talk about kids and preteens, but we're also going to talk about fertile age range versus menopause. Like January's like, yes, I'm a Lamborghini. I like it. See, it's true. You're just more intricate and you're more specific. But here's something that a bunch of you guys need to hear. Even though you feel like it over all these things that you've tried all this time, you're not broken. You've tried all these things on your hormones. You've gone to people for your hormones forever. Your hormones have not been your friends since you started your cycle. Some of you ladies on here, especially, some of the women on here have had horrible experiences with hormones since the day they started their cycle, and it's 40 years later and they're still struggling with hormone issues, and they really honestly think that they were just the defective one off of the shelf and they're broken. And it's not true. In the body, there's always a reason why symptoms come up. There's always a reason why things will not operate the way that they're designed to, but that's not the way that the body is meant to work. Your body wasn't made for symptoms and disease and names and diagnosis and all of these syndromes and itises and isms. That's not the way it was created, but they'll happen when certain things don't add up, when we don't get the things that the body needs, when we get too much of what it doesn't. Things can start to go out of whack and it can start to create imbalance, right? So we're going to talk about that, but right off the bat, to give you hope on stuff, I don't care what age you are. I don't care how long you've had issues with your hormones. I don't care how many surgeries you've had to remove things, to fix stuff that has never worked. You can still get improvement on your hormones and you can still feel a ton better. And there's still a ton of hope for even percentages of healing for you. It's just a matter of figuring out what's not going where. Does that make sense? It's just a matter of figuring out like where that last piece of the puzzle is supposed to go and putting it in the right spot. Okay. All right. Enough of the soapbox. Let's get into some geeky science. Now, don't get bogged down by this. One, because I'm a super science geek. And the second reason is because I'm a horrible drawer. I'm not an artist. All right. So drawing this stuff out, like, don't get bogged down by either one. Like, oh my gosh, look at all these weird names. He's trying to make himself sound smart. And then he's a terrible drawer. I don't know what's going on with here. All right. This is basically the way that a lot of the hormones work, that they're signaled. And so we're going to go through this in detail slowly. All right. But I want you to see this, because this up here, right, when you look at the very top, the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland, both of these organs right here are in the middle of your brain. All of your hormone release, all of the hormone balance, all of the hormone work that happens in the body actually starts in the middle of your brain, not in your ovaries, not in the testicles, not in your thyroid, not in your adrenal glands. Like the hormones don't start there. They start in the middle of your brain. So number one, if you are in the middle, which, I mean, this is laughable, honestly, to say this in the year 2021, after trash can of the year last year and after dumpster fire most of the year this year, like the higher the acute stress you were in, the more chance you have to be firing hormones incorrectly, because the two main organs that are responsible for the releasing of hormone factors and the stimulating factors that tell your organs what to do are in the middle of the brain, and they're resting right against the limbic system and right against this organ called the amygdala, which is the seat, like the seat I'm sitting in, the seat of all emotion. Okay, which is awesome and terrifying and terrible at the exact same time. And so when someone tells you and it feels like a real like cop out, and they're like, oh, well, you just need to stop stressing, girl. You got all these problems. You just need to work on your stress. Well, part of that's a cop out. Part of it's 100% true. Part of it is going, well, it doesn't mean we need to stop stressing out. It's we need to work on handling our stress and making sure, yeah, Rebecca's like, I'm dumping all the oils on my head. I'm anointing myself right this second. We need to learn and figure out how to handle the stress before it handles us. because all of that stress that our brain is trying to process will start to trickle down and cause symptoms all over the body. And hormones is one big area that it happens. Now, it's not lost on me how epic it is that, okay, let's back up a second. Young Living has a million products, right? Like we have SKUs all over the place. We have what, 560 something products or some odd, whatever number of products. We're great in some areas. We're decent in some areas. We're bar none better than anyone in the world in some areas, right? Like I'm not the guy that's going to get on here and say, oh my gosh, you never need to use another product ever again in your entire life because you've now walked into Unicorn Land Young Living and everything that your heart desires in the realm of health is on the shelves of Young Living. That's not true. That's a lie. There are companies that have better probiotics and it's fine, right? Like Young Living has amazing probiotics. It's not the best in the world, but there are some things that we cannot be beat in, right? There are some things that we have the best products on earth, literally of any company anywhere. And there's categories that we work in that we are better than almost anywhere else on earth. Gut support is one that I will hang my hat on, that we are as good or better than any other company in the markets on gut support, from the enzymes to the oils, to the products, to the supplements, to the ICP, to the cleanses, to the shakes, to everything else, to Ningxia even. We are phenomenal at gut support. Structural support, we're really good. I don't know that we're the best in the world at making joints work better and not hurt, but we are very close. We're really good. The other area that we cannot be touched in, like it doesn't matter how many products, you want this back up? James is like, I'm still drawing. It looks like a giant smiley face. It's not, it's an arrow. It's kind of a smiley face. Depends on how your hormones are working. The other area that we cannot be touched in is stress support and emotional support. There's not another company on earth that has as many emotional and stress supporting products as we do in Young Living, from the supplements to the oils. I mean, you could literally grab any essential oil and it works for stress relief. Newsflash and spoiler alert, Digest is great for emotional support. Purification is great for emotional support. It really, it doesn't matter which one you use because of the way that it stimulates the limbic system and it calms down that part of the brain that actually fires all of those stress hormones. Any smell helps with stress control and your body's ability to handle it. Now, there's different oils that are better. This is not staged. I didn't stage this. I'm just reaching to the left. I've got oils all over in here, but let me reach left and grab a couple that are over here. Which ones do I have here? Okay, so I have 3 oils. They all happen to be emotionally driven, right? Clarity oil, amazing for left brain activity, which is what we want to reduce anxiety, reduce stress, reduce that overwhelm. Clarity, huge, totally different than Valor. Valor, super stabilizing, super calming, right? Men love this oil because it doesn't smell like Bath and Body Works. I mean, just to be totally honest, it's not like a super flowery, like Joy is a lot more flowery smelling. Valor's amazing for balancing out emotion and balancing out neurology. Transformation. This oil right here was the one that helped me get out of my anxiety after I'd shattered my femur and I was in a wheelchair for a year. That was the first time in my entire life that I could actually identify with someone who had panic attacks, because I don't know what it was, but once I shattered my femur and I was in my chair after going through all of the torture of getting the surgery and blah, 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 whatever. It's a long story. But once I was in that wheelchair, I was terrified of something else happening all the time. Like we'd go to the park and take our kids to the park. I'm like in my wheelchair up on the park. And I'm like, well, all the things that I thought, I don't know if I was overly confident before or naive, but something broke in me when my leg broke. And I could not watch my kids play on the playground because it terrified me. I was like, they're going to fall off. They're going to break their arm. They're going to shatter their head. All this stuff happens. And my mind just went crazy. Well, after working through it, this was the oil for me. Transformation. Transformation was the oil that literally in an instant reset those pathways to whatever the blend was in this that did it, reset, cleaned off the receptors in the pathway to where not only did I feel better, it was gone. Like no more anxiety, no more problems with fear on that and freaking out, right? And that right there is life-changing for people, because if we increase stress and we let this go, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit more detail in a minute, we are driving hormones out of balance consistently over time. And then we turn around 15, 20 years later, and because of that amount of stress, because of this anxiety, which is neurologically based, there's all this imbalance happening. We now find ourselves in horrible hormone imbalance that we are having to do drastic things in order to fix. Does that make sense? So if we get on it earlier and we consistently use the tools that we have at hand to make sure that our body can handle all of the different things in our environment, it means that we're going to be able to fight off those things better. We're going to be able to adapt to those things better. And the stressors and the things in our environment don't start to create symptoms in us, right? So stress is a huge category that we win in every time. Hormone balancing, I'm not going to say we have the best supplements ever for hormone balancing. We have great ones. There's some other adaptogen herb companies out there that have some good stuff. But using oils in combination with the supplements and everything, the results that you can get with hormones are better, quicker, and longer lasting than any other way that you can do hormone balancing ever. I mean, I've tried it every other way. Being in practice for so long. This year is actually, let's see, coming up on 19 years seeing patients. So why the gray in my beard is evening out. I was showing Cindy, I was like, I used to just have gray on the right, which was weird, but now I'm getting gray both sides, and I'm like balancing out. This is because I'm older than I look. I know, and I've been doing this for a long time, 2 full decades of helping people balance hormones and other stuff with nutrition. Right? There's an oil for that. I like it though. I like the gray in my beard. It's fine. You know, everybody's like, well, you could fix it. I'm like, no, I earned all those. I earned them for sure. All right, so let's talk about this. Here's the way that the trajectory of hormone release works, and then let's get to how it goes off, and then let's start to work backwards and try to figure out how we can balance it out. So the signal from the hypothalamus goes down to the pituitary gland, right? And it tells the pituitary gland, hey, we need you to release estrogen to cause a stimulation of estrogen or cortisol or whatever it is, right? The pituitary gland then sends a stimulating hormone down to whatever organ it needs to work. If it is testosterone, it's sending it down to the testicles in a man. If it is estrogen, it's sending it down to the ovaries in a woman, whatever. If it's thyroid hormone, it's sending it down to the thyroid, right? That one's obvious. Cortisol, it's going to the adrenal gland. So it will send a signal down. That organ will release whatever hormone you need in that moment. Then there is a system in the body called a negative feedback loop. What's supposed to happen, right? Negative feedback loop. What's supposed to happen is once your body has enough, once you have enough estrogen, enough testosterone, enough cortisol, enough thyroid hormone, whatever the thing is that you're using in that moment, the signal goes back up to the brain. It tells the hypothalamus it's done. It's like ding. It's like the oven. It goes bing and it's done. It turns off. The hypothalamus stops stimulating everything and the whole system shuts down. It's supposed to kick off, right? It's supposed to stop. Now, the way that I always remember this, again, because I'm a simple guy, I grew up farming and ranching, right? My family still ranches. They don't farm and raise cattle anymore. They raise white-tailed deer, but we farmed and ranched our whole life. We had water troughs. This is how water troughs work. And a water trough filled up, those of you who are on land now and you ranch, you're going to get me on this. The rest of you are like, what? I just go to the faucet and turn it on. On these water troughs, they worked off of a float system. So there was a float on an arm on the actual pump. And as the water went too low, if it got to a certain level, it would trip a switch and all of a sudden it would start spraying water into this water trough, right? Well, as the water level comes up, it was super simple, right? As the water level came up, once it got to a certain level, it would turn off the water switch and it was supposed to stop the water. But every now and then what would happen, whether it was a calf pushing on it and they were rubbing on it, or it would rust out because it's literally laying in water 24/7, then as that water level came up, and just picture this being your estrogen. Your estrogen levels are coming up and it's supposed to tell it to stop. And some reason it doesn't. It's like, nah, I'm fine. And it just keeps going. And that arm wouldn't turn off the water. And we would walk out to a lake around the water trough and there would be water running everywhere. And we would know exactly what happened. We're like, oh man, which is why when you ever talk to ranchers and they're like, every morning they go, I got to go check water. You're like, you got to go check the water? Why? Because they were checking the level of water to make sure that when that float goes down, it's actually filling the water back up. Because if cattle can't get water, if deer can't get water, they're going to die. If the float goes up and it doesn't kick that off, it will overflow and water goes everywhere. You understand? The negative feedback loop is key to making sure that that water stays level. It's just like that in the body with hormones. If your negative feedback loop, if that signal back to your brain, if the signal in your brain going from place to place actually goes to where it's supposed to and it does its job, then you create part of the hormones you need, it turns it off, you're good, and you roll on and you do your next thing, right? The problem comes in is when we have toxicity and we have got different stuff that gets in the way, and it starts firing those pathways too much. And I'm going to give you probably the number one reason why this happens, and the number one product we have that you're not going to expect. Part of you will, because you've known me for a long time and you've heard me talk on this. But the number one problem why this comes up and why we're seeing a literal epidemic, like the true pandemic in America is not the thing, and it's not what we're dealing with and all the nonsense. The true pandemic is estrogen dominance, and it's this estrogen problem that we have, and this hormone imbalance that we have in kids and in young teens. And here's the number one reason why hormones go out of balance in men and women and kids and everyone, right? The number one reason that we have major hormone imbalance is 100% these chemical hormones called xenohormones. So here's what happens. Because we are so smart as a society, right? This is the downside of technological advancement. Hey, we are so smart and we're so awesome with chemicals that we're going to create things like Febreze and Pine Sol and Lysol and whatever the thing is that you're going to clean your toilet with. That Comet, the scrubbers, whatever the thing is, like all of those things have chemical estrogen compounds in them. They're chemical hormones called xenohormones. I didn't write this down. I'm going off rails right here because this is important. XENO hormones, xenohormones. Now, here's why this is important. If you or your kid, this is more important for your kid. Baker, my baby, is 14 months old, right? Harper, my oldest, is right here beside me. He's almost 13 years old. It is important for both of them. But when Harper was a baby crawling around on the floor, if we didn't know what we knew then, we knew this then, luckily. Like, we were blessed to have known this before we ever had kids. And this is just something that the Lord really blessed us into early on. Take Baker, okay? She's 14 months old, little girl. If she is crawling around on the floors in here, and I am cleaning these floors with toxic crap, the lady that helps us clean the house just came today, cleaned our entire house, right? From top to bottom, not one toxic chemical used in the entire house. And here's the reason why that is so epic. If Baker's crawling around, your skin soaks in essential oils. That's incredible. And if you walk around and you roll around on chemical toxic crap, guess what? Your skin soaks that in too. Like, it gets right into your system, goes right into your hormonal system, just like, if not faster and more powerful than essential oils, not because they are better, because they're stronger, because they are more powerful, because they're fake, right? And this is the problem. So here's what happens when you come into contact with a chemical estrogen compound, right? This chemical estrogen, like Febreze. Let's just use that as an example, because this is one. Like the commercials where they're like, oh man, mom's coming home, and they're like Febreze in the whole house, and they're like, shh, and you see the commercials and they're literally spraying down all of the bedding and all of the furniture and everything else. I literally cringe every time, because I'm like, oh my gosh, because when they're spraying that, and that estrogen, right, that estrogen gets on you, on your kid, on your husband, on you, right? What it does is that chemical hormone goes into your body, and it sits in the seat that stimulates your estrogen to get released. But here's the problem. An estrogen hormone doesn't just get off, right? It's like the jerk kid in school that would take your seat in class and try to mess with you. And you're like, get out of my seat, bro. It's my seat. Bro, come on. And he won't. And he's messing with you. And you literally have to like pull him out of the seat, and you have to like wrestle him out of the seat. This is what happens with chemical hormones. With a regular signal that happens, and I'm sitting in the seat, the body's like, hey, they're done with that. Can you move? It's like, sure. And it moves, and it gets out of the way so that the right thing can get in that spot. So what happens with a chemical hormone? It literally sits in the receptor site, fires estrogen like crazy. So you get way too much at the wrong time. It just starts firing estrogen all over the place. Because as a female, you're only supposed to get the majority of your estrogen the first 14 to 17 days of your cycle. You don't need all the estrogen the last 14 days, because that's when you're supposed to be higher in progesterone, because you were supposed to have already gotten pregnant by that point if you're fertile, if you were actually trying to conceive. In the second half of the cycle, your body's trying to stabilize it and thicken the lining of the uterus. You understand? So estrogen is meant for a period of time. Then it switches, and you're supposed to go to progesterone. When you are toxic and you're overburdened with all these chemical hormones, that's not what happens. You fire estrogen all day long, every day, and you just keep pumping it because you've got all of these chemicals in your system that are making it happen without your permission, without your body's input, and without the body's ability to stop it. Okay. And so you get this horrible estrogen overproduction in the body that starts causing the body to do all these different things. Okay. All right. So when that happens, I'm going to skip a couple slides because since we went off on this isn't more important. And then I'm going to get into the fixes. So here's what happens when you have too much estrogen. And let's go by categories, right? If we have too much estrogen and we have an overproduction or a underproduction of progesterone or whatever, there's multiple things of why you will create too much estrogen in your system. Okay. But if you are a cycling female, let's just go down the list of everybody in hormones. If you're a cycling female, you're between the ages of, let's say, 18 and 45, right? 18 and 55, if you're going to be really statistically accurate, right? 18 and 45. If you have way too much estrogen, you have things like endometriosis, PCOS, massive PMS, heavy bleeding during your cycle, breast tenderness during your cycle, massive migraines during your cycle, problems with sex during your cycle, painful intercourse during your cycle, bloating, mood swings during your cycle. I could go on and on and on. All of those things that happen are because you have adrenal glands that aren't helping out and your estrogen levels are literally flowing over the sides of the water trough like that water when I didn't go check the water that day on the ranch. Okay. It's just running everywhere and your body doesn't know what to do with it. So it starts creating symptoms. If you ever see a syndrome, here's a pro tip for you. Okay. If you ever see somebody that goes, oh man, I went into the doc and they told me I had polycystic ovarian syndrome, and they say syndrome, that is code for I have a lot of symptoms that they didn't really know what they were. And so there's baskets of diagnosis. This is literally what happens. So there's giant baskets of diagnosis. Like when you say, I have an ocular migraine, that is a very specific diagnosis. It means I have a headache behind my eye. Okay, right? When you say I have polycystic ovarian syndrome, like syndrome, it means I got a ton of stuff going on and they didn't know what it was. So they throw all of these different symptoms in one big basket, and that basket is called PCOS. And we call it that so that we can then medicate you and give you birth control and all the things to try to shut your body down and stop your body from functioning the way that it's supposed to. And we could just make the symptoms go away, maybe, right? But remember, symptoms never happen without a reason. Like the body's always trying to get your attention. All right, so let's say that you are a menopausal female and your estrogen is out of control. Well, you will probably go into menopause early. Menopause isn't supposed to start before the age of 55 to 60. I can't tell you how many women I've talked to. If we've got 99 plus, let's say we've got 100, let's say we have 100 people on this call. There's more than that. Let's say they're all women, all right? Let's say 50 of the women on this call are already in menopause. I guarantee you 20 to 30 of them went into menopause well before 50. Because statistically now, all of the women that I've talked to, I've got women that call me that I do consults for that started into menopause in their early 30s. That started into menopause in their late 20s. And that is way before you were created to naturally move into this phase in your hormone life that you're supposed to, right? And so when you're in menopause age, if your hormones are way out of balance, you'll normally start going into menopause early. But here's what happens. Your adrenal glands really try to help. Like they're really helpful and they want to help you, okay? But it's kind of like your adrenal glands trying to help you balance hormones when that's not their main job. Their main job is to help you handle stress. Like you go, oh my gosh, and your adrenal glands in your brain pump hormones to help you go, okay, I got this. We're going to do this. You grab that. You call 911. You give me a drink of water. You know what I mean? Like that's what their job is. But when you ask them to do a job they're not supposed to, it's like when I asked my 5-year-old to help me fold the blankets on the couch. It got done, but it was just terrible. It was a terrible job. Okay, like he didn't know how to fold the blankets. They were everywhere. They weren't done in a good way. I had to redo them all, and it was kind of a mess. That's what happens in menopause when you try to rely on your hormones to balance, try to rely on your adrenal glands to balance your hormones, and then all of a sudden you go into menopause with no support. Then you have major hot flashes. There's all kinds of discomfort and headaches and sweating and all these things that happen. The typical things that every woman's like, oh my gosh, I'm having all these menopause symptoms, are because your body wasn't ready to support the transition because you need estrogen, you need progesterone during that time period. So what happens to men if you have too much estrogen? Well, men are designed to have one hormone and one hormone level all the time, testosterone, period. If testosterone is high, a guy is great. If testosterone's low, a guy's not great, period. It's like literally that simple. If testosterone is high, a guy has willpower, he wants to make decisions, He desires sex like he's supposed to. He can build muscle like he's supposed to. He's got strength like he's supposed to. Like all of these different things. He doesn't have all this inflammation. If his testosterone goes low, which let's say that the guy's testosterone's right here, it can either just drop through the floor, that happens, or his estrogen just gets pumped up so high that inversely it drives it way low, and you have this imbalance. When that happens, you have a guy that will gain a ton of weight. They'll be apathetic and just really not give a crap. They're just like, I don't care about anything. And that's not normal. Like, I don't care. Where you want to eat? I don't care. What do you want to do? I don't care. What do you want to do with the finances? I don't care. What do you want to do with paying those bills? I don't care. You do it. That's not normal. That's not normal for a guy that leads. They won't care about sex or won't be able to perform. That's not normal. Like, I don't care what they tell you. That's not normal. They'll have more inflammation, more autoimmune condition, more pain in their joints. They'll lose muscle development. All these things will start to happen, right? What happens if we have high estrogen in little girls? In little girls that are moving into teenage years, if you have high estrogen, they will go into puberty and they will go into their cycle way early. You'll have girls that start into their menstrual cycle well before the average age of 9 to 12. I won't get into all the stories on that, but way young, like way young. And they'll start developing sexual characteristics and have a full-on menstrual cycle before they're even double digits, like way before. Okay. And that's not normal. For young boys, it will stall them out because, again, remember, they need testosterone. So it'll make it to where they don't go into their puberty age until later, like 2, 3, 4 years later than what they're supposed to. And then also when it hits, it's like this tidal wave of hormone that just knocks them over. And it's really hard to get that back under control. Mental irregularities, mood disorders, anxiety, depression, all the different things, right? If you're talking about teens and stuff, I mean, we could go all in on this for hours and hours, but I want to steer your time. So let's get into some stuff we can do, because the main thing is, okay, we know that that's off. Oh, here's the one thing I want to tell you though. I got Baker over there. Can you see? Hold on. Can you see her looking through the window? There she is. She's like, hey, let me in. See, these are the people. These are why you use oils. This is why you clean your house with non-toxic crap. Okay, here we go. So the number one product, right? She does this with a lot of my classes. She'll just like press her face against the window as I'm teaching. And it makes it so much easier to teach when they're doing that. So the number one product that I talk about all the time that will change generations on hormones is a Thieves Household Cleaner. Not Clary Sage. That's awesome. Not Idaho Blue Spruce, which is amazing. Not Shutran. Not even Sensation Oil. It is the Thieves Household Cleaner. Thieves Household Cleaner, replacing toxic junk in your home with a cleaner that doesn't activate hormones out of balance, that doesn't start firing all this in their system, will prevent all this toxicity and will stop the toxicity even in adults when you can get all that out of your system. I mean, think about all the things, for those of you who've been in YL for a long time. Think about that one bottle. I had one sitting here the other day. Let's just pretend this is Thieves Household Cleaner. I'm a props guy. So this one bottle of cleaner, think about all of the different bottles of cleaners that you had in your house that you got rid of because of using the one, and how many different bottles of toxicity and how many different exposures of toxic junk you had before. Oh, you went to go do laundry, toxic exposure. You went to go wash dishes, toxic exposure. Went to go clean the windows, toxin. Clean the floors, toxin. Clean the oven, toxin. You see what I'm saying? But now you switch it with the Thieves Household Cleaner, and not only is there not a toxic exposure, you're getting therapeutic essential oils in the product to help your immune system and help your body work better. That's the number one thing, period, is getting the toxins out of your environment. Okay, let's roll into some of this stuff. Now, one of the things I want you to do, because I don't want to go over Jill's time, I also have a whole other call to teach at 7, which is awesome. But I know Jill's going to be teaching you business stuff in 20 minutes. So I'm going to spend the next like 10 minutes talking about some of the solution stuff and give you a bunch of things. And then I'm going to take a couple of questions on this. But I also do Q&A on hormones on Instagram every week because people have so many questions about it. I literally just go live on Instagram and we do some Q&A stuff almost every single week on Mondays. And so if you go onto my Instagram, and it's just at Dr. Jim Bob, doctor spelled out, then I have in my IGTV tab, there's different, like there's 2 or 3 of the last 2 weeks of just Q&As on hormones and stuff. And so make sure and check those out. All right, we can't leave diet out. So one of the number one first things is you've got to have a good amount of fats in order to build hormones. If you're trying to build hormones without having good fats, it's like trying to build a house with no 2x4s. It just won't happen. Like you're like, hey, framers, we want you to go build that house. And they're like, sweet, bring that trailer with the 2x4s. We're like, no, you don't get any 2x4s. And they're like, well, then good luck building a frame on a house. It's just not going to happen. And so you've got to have the building blocks, and good cholesterol is the building block of all of your hormones. And you get that from good dietary fats, right? Not Whataburger, even though, you know, in the South, that's amazing, but it's not that. Number two, we got to have good, healthy protein. If you don't have good protein, you can't maintain tissue integrity. You can't regulate inflammation. You can't help regulate, you know, sugar as it goes into the cell. You can't regulate insulin. There's so many different things. And so you need healthy protein to support immune system. Meats, nuts, turkey, fish, bison, chicken, clean pork, if you eat that, different stuff. All of that is important. The other side of it is just limiting the amount of processed foods. You can have tons of carbs. You need carbs. You need complex carbs. But complex carbs aren't Starburst. There's a guy in class with me at the school, and he brings candy every day to class, like every day. And he's like, hey, bro, you want some? I'm like, no. I'm like, I love it. It would be amazing. It tastes good for a reason, because they want you to never stop eating it. But that's not going to sustain you, and it's not a good building block of the things that you need to eat, right? So you go through and you go, okay, am I getting anything in my diet that I shouldn't? Yeah. Okay. Well, is there any of that I can just like easily take out? Sure. Then modify that, right? Especially if we're talking about fertility and hormones, right? If you're talking about fertility and we can't get pregnant, or you're in a situation where you're miscarrying multiple times, it is more than worth it to give up Diet Cokes and the different things that you're working on, because you're trying to give your body the best chance that it can to sustain full-on life, which is not taken lightly. It's a huge deal, right? And estrogen dominance, like going back to that, is one of the number one reasons for infertility, because as you have so much estrogen, you build up too much lining on the uterus. And then once you get into the second half of your cycle, number one, you'll ovulate way late. Like women who come in and we do testing on them, if their estrogen is really high, they'll ovulate on like day 24 instead of day 14 to 16, which is normal. They'll ovulate like way late. And so you're never ovulating around the time of when you would conceive, right? The other thing is the eggs get really over mature. They're never ready to actually fertilize. And when you get into the second half, the body is just trying to clean out everything so much, it's sloughing off, and a woman can miscarry repeatedly over and over again because there's no way to stabilize that lining. Okay. And so we're going to talk about a couple of products to help support that whole system. But one of the other things that I always start with patients, whether I don't care what they come in for, is gut support. If you have hormone imbalance and you're not balancing your gut out, then you're only going to get so far, because the gut has huge implications in immune support, immune function, and neurological function. A third of the gut, right? A third of the nervous system is found in the gut, and a third of the immune system is found in the gut. So if that is off and that's not balanced out, then we're going to have a real issue, and it's going to carry over into these other systems. And that inflammation that happens from gut imbalance is going to carry over, and we're going to get more and more inflammation. We're going to get more and more cortisol release. If we get more and more of that, we're getting more and more estrogen. We're getting more and more fat cells, which create more and more estrogen. And now we're further into this problem that we're in, that we were talking about before, right? It's just this snowball effect. Okay. Let's talk about some top products for foundational help with hormones. As far as specific stuff, we're going to get into a couple specific things on oils. I'll tell you on some of these that are foundational and some of them that are directed, right? So foundational supplements on this, fish oil, omega giants. Let me move my hand. I'm creating like a weird shadow on this. Hold on. Hit a button. Okay. Fish oil, we need good fat. So omega giants, probiotics, getting Life 9 to support that gut. We've got to have good probiotics. We've got to have a greens product. So multi-greens to be able to regulate inflammation, regulate overall function. Everybody wants to fix the thing that's wrong without making sure everything else is working right. Okay. Like that's not exactly how the body is designed. We've got to make sure that everything is working right, so that when we go into fixing things that are wrong, it stays that way. Part of the reason that you guys haven't seen long-lasting changes, no, nitro is not a B complex. Okay. Let me go back. Nitro is not a B complex. I don't know what I did here. I hit a button. Close. There we go. Okay. Nitro is they call it a cognitive enhancer. It's not even an energy boost. I wouldn't even call it an energy shot. It's a cognitive enhancer because of the oils and the chocolate and the stuff that's in it. It literally goes and focuses everything. Now, that may give you more energy because of like the way that your body works, but it's not necessarily a B complex. So B complex would be like super B, right? The reason is because B complex, a B vitamin, is needed for every single process in the body. Every process in the body has to have a B complex. And so we want it to work better, right? Multigrains, Ningxia Red. All right, one of the things that happens rapidly when our hormones get out of balance is our blood sugar gets way out of whack, okay? Way out of whack because of adrenal stress, because of whatever, okay? Cortisol is going all over the place, so blood sugar is like all over the place. So one way that you can easily regulate adrenal stress and help them like take a breather is to balance your blood sugar out. The protein helps with that, making sure that you're getting good balanced meal, but Ningxia Red is money for this. Like it balances blood sugar quicker than almost anything I've seen, period. Not even like just in YL, like it balances blood sugar so quickly that it'll help like bring you down out of an anxiety feel, like that whole like, I'm unstable because my blood sugar is going crazy. It'll help level that out super quick. Okay, so super important on this. Let me roll through these next two slides and then I'm going to answer a couple questions on here. Themagen is more of a specific supplement for women that we have in Young Living. And then we have a tincture called Estro that's really good as well for an overall supporter. But the two targeted supplements that we have, we don't have specific adaptogen herbs, which I like to use for endocrine and hormonal support. But the two targeted ones are Endojazz and Powerjazz. Now, Endojazz and Powerjazz, technically, Endojazz was technically formulated more for women, for endocrine system, adrenal glands, thyroid, you know that. Powerjazz was technically formulated more for men. But because you are with a company that uses the highest quality products and all of their things, that means that women can use Powerjazz and men can use Endojazz and they all get great results. And it doesn't matter. I've had just as many women that take Powerjazz. They're like, oh my gosh, you like rock my world and I feel amazing. I'm like, great. Because it's a macronutrient model, which means they use basically concentrated food in the products. Powerjazz and Endojazz both have herbs in it as well. So the only thing I'm going to caution you with on that is that if you're on medication at all, then you need to really watch using anything with herbs. You need to make sure that it balances out well with that. If you're using medication and you're using an essential oil, 9 times out of 10, it's normally okay, unless it's a citrus thing. There's a few things that you have to look at, like grapefruit. But on hormones, if you are going to use herbs and you're on different medication, just be careful. Okay. All right, let's talk about some essential oils. For women, we're going to go through categories. I'm going to pick my top picks of oils for each category real quick, and then I'm going to go on to a couple of the questions. Yes to Pro Plus. I like this. She's like doubting herself. Yes to Pro Plus, right? Yes. Second one on the list. Yes to Pro Plus all the time until it makes you mad. And then I'm going to explain why on that. I'm going to talk about that. Endoflex. Everybody needs Endoflex. You're going to see a couple of these that are consistent across every single category. Endoflex is one. If you don't balance out the endocrine system, it's the starting point of all the hormones. It's again, you're not going to get long lasting changes. Everything's going to stay out of balance and you're never going to get regulation on that. Progestins Plus. Progestins Plus helps with naturally elevating and naturally stimulating normal progesterone release, okay? And females and women, right? Like I don't recommend Progestins Plus for men. Obviously, this is not needed. This is women, menopausal women. We're going to talk about it as well. Yeah. See, Trudy says, yes, too much Pro Plus made me mad. Yes. And I'm going to explain why. Every other essential oil in Young Living is an actual essential oil, right? Like, so when you signed up or you talk to your people, they're like, girl, you can use all the essential oils you want. You can't overdose it on essential oil because it's like adaptogenic. It's a cool word I learned. And they say all this stuff. You can't use too much. That is true, except for Progestins Plus. Okay, Progestins Plus is not a true essential oil. It's a serum, so it has essential oils in it, but it also has wild yam complex in it. So here's the deal: you use Progestins Plus up to and including the point to where you want to rip that door off the hinges, or you want to break whoever in front of you and who's in front of you in half, and then you slowly back off of the person and the oil at the same time. You back down. The reason it does that is because progesterone and testosterone are both are stimulated by the same side of the nervous system, and they are very similar hormones in women. If you are low, like, I mean, if your testosterone levels are low, it will act the same as your progesterone levels being low and vice versa. So they rise and fall together a lot. So as you're driving progesterone really high, sometimes you can over push testosterone and you get angry and you get aggressive, right? Should you stop using while menstruating? No, actually, some of the times when you are on that side of the cycle and you're on the actual sloughing phase of the cycle, that's when you're supposed to be getting more progesterone release, period. This is where it gets into intricacies. I'm not going to go super in depth on this, but for something like Clary Sage, which is next, look at the Clary Sage Dragon Time. All day, every day, anytime, whenever you need it. Those are all the time supports. Progestins Plus is a support in the times of your cycle when you need progesterone the most. Usually days 17 through 28, normally. But again, at the beginning, when you're starting to try to balance it out and you're starting to try to bring estrogen back down, you may need to use it during your entire cycle to give your hormones a little bit of a boost, and then you back off. Does that make sense? And so sometimes you just kind of have to regulate it. Again, you're going to know based on how you feel. If you don't feel right, you didn't do it right. This literally, it seems so stupid to say that, like so simple. But if you're like, oh my gosh, like I feel awful. Well, that's not normal, right? Like your hormones don't lie. Your body doesn't lie to you. And if someone's like, that's good, you feel horrible, that's good, it's changing. That's not true. They're lying to you. They don't know what they're talking about. If you're like, I did this, I just feel awful. You can have some up and downs of how you feel. That is normal. But feeling worse and it going way down in it, that's not usually normal. And so just pay attention to that, okay? All right, Clary Sage Dragon Time. And then I put almost in every category emotional oils. Why? We talked about at the beginning, because of the stress response, right? We want to make sure that we're bathing the brain in those oils to keep the stress from causing symptoms in us. All right, menopausal women. Ready? Menopausal women. Sclerescence. Number one on the top of the list. I get more women who are in menopause that are like, thank you, Jesus, for sclerescence than any other oil. Combining sclerescence with progestins is a whole nother level. But again, you have to kind of gauge your emotional, like your mood, and how you kind of feel and like agitation level on that progestins plus. You may need to back off on it some, right? Endoflex, okay? Endoflex, because your adrenal glands are key in making sure that your body is balancing out. If your adrenal glands are fatigued, you will not enjoy menopause at all. If your adrenal glands are healthy and happy, menopause is a cinch, literally. Like every other culture in the world celebrates menopause except for the United States, except for America. America's like, oh man, you're going through the change, oh, menopause, and they make this whole thing out of it, right? When that's not the way that your body's designed. Endoflex is key for that. Emotional oils, and then at the bottom, lady scleral. Okay, see, she celebrated it, Kathy. It's exactly right. Like you have made it. When you get to menopause, you're like hit the finish line. You're like, I have done this. I have passed through the fertile race. And I have crossed over. I'm over, dramatizing this, but you've hit the finish line, which is awesome. That's the way it's supposed to be. And then you don't have to worry about or plan on having a menstrual cycle every month, right? And so making sure that your body adapts though, and adapts to those hormones is really key. All right, let's talk about men. Shutran, Idaho Blue Spruce. Look at that. Endoflex is there again. That's weird. I put Clarity and Valor on there, not just because they're sitting in front of me, but because men need emotional support that's like very specific on that part of the brain. Both of those are really parasympathetic left brain oils. Don't worry about why that is. That's a whole other lecture, but those are great. Just like peppermint. It's why men like peppermint. It's a very left brain oil. Dr. Ollie Wanker, he's an awesome leader in Young Living, has done brain scans on oils. Not even going to go way in depth on this, but they can have you smell an oil and then watch the brain scan and what areas light up in the brain. It's fascinating. And part of them like fire this whole left side of the brain, which men need. They're more left brain dominant. And then the last one on there is Mister. Okay. Great oils for men's hormones. Teens and kids. Here's what we're going to do on teens and kids, because I don't like jacking with their hormones early on unless I know what's going on. Here's the biggest thing. Endoflex and emotional oils on all of them, all the time, any age. I don't care who they are. And then you work on diet and movement. This is the thing. The more they move, right, the better they're going to be. The better their diet, the better their hormones, the better the foundation. Good fats, good protein, as least amount of processed foods and least amount of artificial sweeteners as possible. Okay. All right. I'm going to put this up before I answer questions because I had to remind myself. If you want more stuff on this, we got a ton of videos for you guys that are all Young Living specific videos on oilyapp.com. Go to oilyapp.com. We've got like literally every single system videos mapped out. We've got all kinds of stuff that we've done in here for you guys. And you can get access to those. Go check all that out. Okay. Let me see here. I'm going to answer a couple questions, Jill, and then I'm going to turn it back over to you so you can have it. And dude, I'm like 2 minutes early. Look at that. Not to toot my own horn, but okay. My boy thrives on acceptance. Let's see. Started using Endoflex, rolling it over my thyroid once a day. And after a couple of weeks, I started to have a lump knot in my throat. Why is that? There's a bunch of different reasons. If you use an oil and you get a reaction to it, you could have literally dehydrated in that area. You're using an oil that the body has to use hydration to actually absorb. You could have changed the soft tissue in that area. You could have been bringing up something and breaking up scar tissue in the area. There's a million things that could have happened. What I always tell people is if something comes up, you get a rash on an area, it can happen. Like you can't be allergic to true essential oils, but you can create a sensitivity reaction from overusing it. This happens like anything, right? So if you start to get a reaction, stop using in another area, because the great thing about an essential oil is the frequency matches where it's going to go, whether you put it on the area or not. So if I use Endoflex on my wrists, it still helps with my thyroid, even if I don't put it over my thyroid. Does that make sense? Because putting it over the thing doesn't mean that it just gets to it faster. It's not like it's like boom and like goes right into the thyroid. It just means that you're also stimulating and telling your brain that you want it to work there. But you can also put the oil on, focus on your organ itself, touch it. This is called therapy localization. You're touching it, right? Without actually putting the oil in this spot if it's a sensitive area. And that may be what's going on there. What about men who have low testosterone? NP and see this a lot. Men who have low testosterone usually eat crap and move too little and don't sleep enough and are highly stressed out. This is it. Like typically, like we have a men's group that we help teach in, and we've got literally like 4,000 men in this men's group, this Young Living men's group. And we have men's retreats, and we have hundreds of guys come to these retreats, and tons of the guys are low testosterone. And not one of them, I've hardly ever met one of them that is low testosterone, that is working out really well, sleeping good, eating perfect, and doing what they're supposed to. And oh my God, I don't know what's going on. My testosterone's low. That just doesn't happen. Like their body, so they're not doing one of those things well. Sometimes they need a boost on stuff. And so, we have them do the Idaho Blue Spruce orally and topically to help give them a boost, along with the Power Jazz because it has tribulus in it, right? Which is a great one. But there's got to be the lifestyle stuff on there too. PD8020. I didn't talk about that one. That one is awesome. PD8020 stands for pregnenolone DHEA 80/20. There's 80% pregnenolone in there, 20% DHEA. Both of those are great on the hormone pathway. It's an amazing product. And so that for fertile age range and menopausal age range women, that one is awesome. So definitely check into that one as well. Prenolone body cream is awesome. Huge on that. All right, I'm gonna scroll all the way down. Let me see. Okay, for postmenopause. Yep. Cortistop is awesome for adrenal glands. It's not what you think. I always thought cortistop, I don't want my cortisol to stop. That's dumb. It's really named weird. I don't like the name of it. It's not cortistop, it's cortihelp more than anything. It's like cortisol help to assist the adrenal glands while they're overproducing cortisol. And so you don't want to stop cortisol release because cortisol is important, right? To help you handle stress, to help you release sugar, all those things. But it is good for helping. Now, the thing I will tell you is you normally want to cycle that supplement in and out. It's not like some of the other supplements. Like you normally want to take it for 2 weeks and then don't take it for a week. Take it for 2 weeks and then don't take it for a week. So it allows that organ to catch up and do its thing. Last question. I'm going to answer this one. This is a good question. All of Endoflex for teens and kids. I mean, like all the Endoflex, all you can find for every teen and every kid. Use it all the time. All of them. All day, anytime. If you've never used Endoflex on a toddler having a fit, you haven't lived. It's like poof. Like I'm serious. Like 4-year-old will freak out. Oh, you're so awesome. Endoflex on their back. Done. That fit will normally stop. It's crazy. It works super, super fast. Okay, so Endoflex, is it as effective? This is a fantastic question on all oils. Is it as effective as diffusing as topical? Reluctant Suns 10, 15, 17. They do Ningxia and D only. Well, first of all, do what your mom tells you. There you go. There's that. So take that clip and play that for them every day. But the other thing is, this is a fantastic question. Here's the deal. Everybody feels like oils are more effective when they're rubbing them on themselves. Oh, I'm rubbing it on my shoulder. Look at this. It's so effective. But essential oils work off of frequency. They don't work off of you touching the area necessarily. So because they are frequency based, okay, they are just as effective, if not more effective, in a diffuser as they are topically on you, because you're getting prolonged exposure. When you're putting them in a diffuser, I mean, that diffuser is running for 4, 6, 8, 12 hours, and you're sitting there getting exposure to this olfactory, and it's going down into the lungs, and then the lungs down in the alveoli where there's more blood vessels than anywhere in the body. It's pumping it into your system, and then it can go to the area that it needs it. So yes, highly effective, highly awesome. All right, you guys are amazing. I'm done.